Floodgate family, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Leadership Live. We're really happy to have Mike DelVacchio, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of Butterfly Network, joining us here to talk about one of my favorite subjects of all time, one of the most important things, leadership. But I've been lucky enough to get to know you over the years, Mike, but I'm sure there's a lot of people here that aren't as lucky. So please give us a little bit of insight into you, your background, and of course, what's going on at Butterfly Network.
Sure, Joe. Thanks. I really appreciate that. So my name is Mike DelVacchio, and I've spent over 25 years in the medical device space. Had the great fortune of working for some fantastic companies, larger companies like Boston Scientific and Johnson & Johnson. And then, I spent some time in some startups, Colossus Surgical, which we sold to Medtronic, United Biologics. And then most recently, for the past 7 years, I've been at 3M, Medical Solutions Division, and I led North America, US and Canada for them as we integrated KCI into our business. And so it was a lot of fun. But that journey has led me to where I am today. And so for the past 3 or 4 months now, I've been with Butterfly Network. And for those of you who don't know, we are a medical device company that also works in software as a service and artificial intelligence to bring and really democratize ultrasound as a diagnostic tool for physicians around the world. And so relatively small compared to some other companies, about $100 million in sales this year, but we're growing at north of 20% as we continue to build out that hardware and software into our facilities. So it's a new journey, and it's real exciting so far. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, really exciting to watch what you guys in the technology and the way you're just bringing ultrasound to the front of care versus the end of care. It's pretty impressive. But curious, you've worked with the biggest, most predominant companies in med device and MedTech, Boston Sci, 3M. I'm curious, what you've seen are the key attributes of the good leaders you've seen in this space. What do you think it takes?
So, again, so I work at some very big companies. So I work with some great leaders, and the leadership is an evolution, and it's always a constant journey. And one of the things that I took away, and by the way, I think when the light bulb really came off for me was when I was my days at KCI, and that is that of a servant leader. And I don't even think it was called that at the time, but you do hear that term now. And I never really aspired to the leadership level that I am today. I was a sales rep. I carried a bag, and then I was a sales manager, and then I realized I wanted to contribute at a higher level, so I got into sales training. And then I realized if I wanted to add more value, I need to get more marketing background skill set. So I think what the attributes of a good leader is someone who's constantly learning, someone who's always taking on more responsibility, and then taking on that role of a servant leader where you're working for your team, right? The only way as a leader you're going to be successful is through your team, through your organization. So what can you do to remove barriers? What can you do to make it easier for them? What can you do to make it easier for them to work with the customers? So that you can help grow our business. And I had a young manager one time said to me, well, when's it get to be about me? And I'm like, that's the point. It's never about you, right? It's always about your team. But it was so honest and refreshing to hear him ask that question.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point, right? When you flip that switch, especially for being a highly effective individual contributor, where it's all about what you deliver and what you've done, right? To being able to step back. And usually I see not everyone makes that transition, but being able to step back and make it about the team first. Yeah, I can see how that's a key attribute that everyone should take forward as they're moving into that. Now, I'm sure you always did it right. I'm just kidding. I know I never did. But there's probably some lessons you've learned the hard way. And I'm curious if you could share one or two of those that other people might not fall in that same pitfall.
So when you think about the hard way, right, is especially if you work, and I guess it's whether it's a big company or a small company, is you've got to be willing to try. You got to try some experiments. You got to try some pilots, and they're not all going to work, right? So as a smaller company, we planted a lot of seeds, and we had to see which ones that were going to grow. At a bigger company where you had a little more dollars to invest, and so you would run pilots. Okay, but I will tell you, they don't always work. And so that sometimes comes back as a hard lesson. Hey, we tried something, it didn't work. Well, no, actually we tried something and we learned that that's not the way to go. Right. And so the Eagles, didn't win the Super Bowl. I'm a Philly guy. So the Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl, but Jalen Hurts the next day said, look, we're either winning or we're learning. And that's key. And that's the mindset that you've got to have, is that, we're either winning, we just learned what not to do. And that's okay to pivot. It's okay to adjust, because what got you here today is going to get you there in the future. Right. And so that's something I would say is, before you sometimes people, wear that and say, this didn't work. No, we've just learned a way not to do something. Right. And let's take it forward. And I think that's really key. As you continue to build out your career and get different experiences, right? So now here I am at Butterfly. I had a lot of things that didn't work, right? And you learn just as much, if not more, from what didn't work as what did work, and that gives you the courage to try these experiments or pilots as you move forward in new companies.
That's a great perspective. It's that growth mindset perspective. And, again, leaders are probably very successful. That's the reason they've been tapped to become that leader. And when something doesn't work, a pitfall could be just to see it as a failure and you messed up. But realize that that's part of the process. That happens. That's a good thing. And to celebrate that fast failure and learn from it, that's a great perspective. Now, we talked a lot about those leaders that are up against those high performers, right? That you're always trying to identify in your team. How do you develop those, right? When you identify someone's a high performer, what do you do?
So as a senior leader, right, and I have VPs who report to me, for the last decade or so, and so you want to identify. So now you have a high performing team, and even within that team, right, you have higher performers that sometimes set themselves apart. And so how do you give them that opportunity? And for me, it comes from experience, is that you give them more. And you give them more, and you give them opportunity to stretch, and you realize, wow, I gave them more to do, and they exceeded. And so let's continue to give them more. And so what I want to do is try and give people more and more opportunity, right? Give them opportunity to be on the stage, give them an opportunity to run with a pilot and lead it beyond their scope of responsibility. And that stretches them, and you grow when you get stretched. And I appreciate that as a leader. When I get those opportunities, and I want to make sure I continue to pass that on, and then I also challenge those high performers to pay it forward, right? I've given you this opportunity, right? I've given you this opportunity to expand and grow. Make sure you're doing that for those on your team as well.
No, that's great. I had one of my former leaders, an old CEO, that said, "Great people love great responsibility." So you give them that big responsibility, and they'll flourish, right? And your point before, when they don't, it was just a way to learn, right?
Right.
So
it's a way to learn. It's an opportunity for both of us to learn, right? If we do, and I tell my team members this as well. If we always do things my way, well, then I'm not learning, right? And so while I may not disagree, I may not agree with the direction you're going in, I can get aligned that that's something we're going to go forward with. And one way or another, we're going to learn. It works, and I've learned something new, or it didn't work, and now maybe you've learned something new.
Right.
Go for it.
Right. But to have that ability to give that, I don't say leash, but give that agency over is powerful. That's a good point. This is near and dear to my heart, right? Finding and evaluating new talent to bring on the team. What have you found is the best way to approach that? First define, and then figure out if they're right. What's worked for you?
Yeah. So listen, medical device is a small world, right? And look, you and I have run the same circles for years now, right? And so for me, unlike the stock market, a previous success to me is a good indicator of future success, right? So what have you done? What successes have you had? What have you learned during that journey? What skill sets have you developed that are now transferable? And then I'm also looking for people, to be a good coach, you have to be coachable. And so I'm always looking for those who are great coaches and show me that coachability and what you've been able to do from it. And then, we actually talked about a little bit is, what do you learn? What have you learned? What have you experienced? And then what have you learned? 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 And then what have you learn what successes have you had? Tell me about some of your failures. Tell me about something that didn't work, and what did you learn from it, and what did you do next? And that speaks to that growth mindset, and that's the kind of person. Oh, one last thing, and can work on a team, right? And so when I think about talent, and I'm building a team, you don't need 9 great first basemen, right? To use a sports analogy, you need the right talent at the right place to build out your team. And if you can't work well within the team, I don't need 9 superstars if they can't work on a team, right? So you got to figure out how they're going to mesh and work together, and learn and lean on each other's specialties.
Right. I think that's a great point, because a lot of times people are just looking at that individual, what they're contributing, but looking at the entire team need and cohesion so they can all play better together, right? Use your sports analogy. So that's great. Everybody's watching. I'm here talking with Mike, who's the CRO of the Butterfly Network. But I know I'm asking him questions, but I'm sure you have a lot of questions you want to ask. He's got a lot of great information. So you just post those questions below right now, live, dynamically. At the end of this, we're gonna pick up some of those questions, and Mike will be happy to answer. So we'll have some time. So again, post those below. And as we go forward, another question for you. A lot of people that are watching this, will be watching this, want to be a leader, want to have a career path like yourself. What would you recommend for aspiring leadership to be tapped and noticed for the first opportunity?
So, what should they do? And I will tell you is, don't be shy about letting it be known. Okay. And so again, I started off as a sales rep. I let it be known very quickly to my manager and my manager's manager that, I'm going to be great at sales, but I also want to take on additional responsibility. But when the time is right and you see opportunities for me, please keep me in mind. And a lot of people don't do that, right? They kind of sit back and wait. And, when I was at Johnson, large corporation, I remember people thinking about, well, I'm just waiting for succession planning and I'm waiting for HR to point me in the right direction. It's like, there's no man behind the curtain pulling the strings. Okay. There just isn't. And so you got to take control of your own career and where you want to go, and letting somebody know that this is what you aspire to do, or this is what you're thinking about, is the very first step. And then capitalize on that opportunity when it comes your way. All right. When early on in my career, I went from a sales rep and now as a sales trainer, very classic move. And they needed somebody to work internationally. Raise my hand. Love to take that opportunity on. Right. And by doing that and had some success internationally, they brought me more opportunities my way. Right. And so it's really, once you have that opportunity, capitalize on it, and then make sure you let it know that, yes, I really enjoy this. Is there more things I can do?
Yeah, no, that's a great example. I mean, that simple, hey, raise your hand, let it be known what you want, because great leaders, that's all we do is help people help them achieve their goal, right? Knock out of those, get there. If they don't know that's what you want, it's not going to happen. And I think the second thing I heard you say is, volunteer for those opportunities when they come. When you see them, be the first one to stand up to and for you, I mean, talking about getting out of your comfort zone, going outside the U.S. as a trainer, you're like, what am I doing? How do I do this? But you got into it, you figured it out, and you learn from it. And then when someone said, who's the guy that's going to carry the ball next, they look to you, right? So that's a great example. I love that. So guys, please comment if you have questions. I got one more question here for Mike, and then I'll be turning it over to you. So if there's questions you have for Mike, please make sure you post them here. We'll pull them in. This one's kind of the fun question here. So who's your favorite superhero and why? And you don't have to stand like this to answer the question.
I did read somewhere, though, if you put in your superhero pose, it builds up a lot of confidence before you speak.
Yeah, I have heard that too. Yeah, exactly.
Heard that?
And we need to stand like this for the whole
So, I will tell you that I actually don't have a favorite superhero in the classic sense. Any superhero that can fly, I'm very jealous of, because I love to travel, love to experience different cultures, different locations. And so if I had the ability to fly and get some there very quickly and experience something new, I think that would be fantastic. But my true superhero actually is my grandfather. And, here was my grandfather who's, he's passed on now, lived well into his 90s. But this is a guy who started working for GE his first day out of high school, and they paid for his undergrad and they paid for his MBA, and he worked there his entire career, working on missiles and space ships. And I was just like, wow, this guy's a real rocket scientist. Okay.
Right.
And by the way, but the best part about him was that he was the greatest guy and nicest person. So he had an amazing career, but also was this great family patriarch for us. And I was like, wow, if I could do it like that, that would be amazing.
Right. That's super cool. And you learn that not only you can have success, but you can have that balance. And he put, his value in his career and his family, and that's awesome. That's an incredible lesson, and that is not easy to do, and it does take a special kind of superhero to be able to accomplish it.
It really does, and that was my takeaway. And I would love to tell you I'm great at it, and sometimes I get a little bit out of balance and find myself so focused on work and the company and the results, and it's the end of the quarter, and how are we going to do this, and sometimes catch myself and realize that it's really all about the family. And this is why we're working. I have 4 kids and they keep me really busy.
Yeah.
But it's really setting them up for this future and success.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I see we've got a few questions here to be able to pull in. So let me go over to the questions again. Everyone, if you have questions, just post them below. Here's one from Marcus. Marcus Moore, how has your leadership changed when you first became a leader to now, and how has technology changed how you lead? So kind of 2 questions in there, Marcus. Those are really good ones. I like
that. So, hey, Marcus, good to hear from you. I think that, and I'll just share with you, early on as a leader, much earlier in my career, you sometimes wear that leadership cape, right? I'm in charge, and I'm going to be very giving a lot of direction, and I understand how to get things done, and you're going to follow my lead. And now I think it's evolved and matured in such that, I have all these experiences, but you know what? I'm always learning from those in the room, and let's talk through how we want to do these things. And then next thing you know, now I'll help you build out your plan. But now that you've told me this, it's your plan. It's not my plan, right? If I give you the plan, there's always the piece that, well, this is how Mike wanted me to do it, right? Now I sit down, I'll coach them through it. But by the time we're done, Marcus, it'd be your plan. And now you're accountable for delivering your plan. I just help you get there. And I think that's a key difference, as I call that leadership style.
Right.
Now, technology, that is, it's continuing to evolve, and very quickly. I remember my days at KCI when the iPhone was brand new. We moved on from this brick communication technology device to the iPhone, and that was a big deal to be able to do that. We were launching Salesforce.com at the same time, and I think the technology maybe was a little bit ahead of its time, right? The technology was fantastic, but we didn't necessarily know how to use it. Now I think of something like Salesforce.com, which still a lot of people I think it was like a big brother watching tool. And what they really need to understand is this is how you run your business tool. All right, this is where we're going to put our marketing plans in. This is where we're going to put our sales projects in. This is how we're going to work with our customers, especially in the business I'm in right now, where client experience is such a big piece of it. You make the sale for the next 5 years with the software. And so you need to deliver that client experience, and you have multiple people coming in at different points. You need to understand what is it the customer is looking for, collect that data so that you can come back and show them the ROI associated and the value that they're getting from our products and services. If you didn't have that technology, you would never be able to show that to them. So I think, look, for those who have not embraced, I'm going to use Salesforce.com, but other CRM tools who have not embraced utilizing the technology that's available to them, you're going to get left behind very quickly as it evolves.
And what I loved about what you said there it's about checking, it's making sure we're doing the tasks. It's about how we're bringing value to the customer is the reason that technology is important, right? So it's transcending just management to really showing the impact that it needs to the business and to ultimately the customer. I love that use of technology for sure. Here's a question from Danny. Do you have a favorite book about leadership that you recommend? Something that, someone...
Yeah, well, my favorite book is always the one I'm reading right now. Right now I'm reading Crossing the Chasm. And
Okay, yeah, come on.
it's really about taking it, and what I'm at right now with the startup organization. What is it we need to do to cross the chasm into, that tipping point where it's going from, we're pushing to now where the customers are actually pulling from us. It's definitely eye opening. So something I recommend.
Yeah, that early majority, that early adopters, the media majority, right? Getting that big jump between those two, if I'm remembering the terms right.
But I also, as I thought it through, I have a couple of Dale Carnegie books on my shelf, and what I enjoy right now is like I said, I have 4 kids, right? One's a freshman in college, one's a senior in high school, and I have a 15-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the teenagers, I have introduced them to Dale Carnegie, right? How to win friends and influence people is, look, this is how you need to communicate. This is how you want to move things forward. And I don't think, and by the way, by taking it off the shelf and talking through it reminded me and refreshed some ideas that I haven't heard in a while. So I highly recommend that to everyone as well.
Yeah, that is a book of universal truths. And I've got a 13 and 14-year-old, and I think you've inspired me. I need to do a little book club with my kids on that one. So I think I'm going to take a page out of that there. All right, last question here from Sarah Cregan here. How do you develop talent who's a performer but not the best team player? Mary, you've kind of talked about you need to be that team player. This is that, great execution, but might not be playing well on the team, I'm guessing here.
Well, and so, the question is, so that's multifaceted, right? I love the question, right? So if you have a high performer who's an individual contributor, right, you want to make sure that you don't, you never want to slow them down, right? So to use another analogy, I never want to have a horse that you have to, hit in the rear to make a move faster. So if you have a high performer who's running, you never want to slow them down. You just want to help guide them in the right direction and ask them, right? And I've had this conversation lots of times. What do you want to do with your career, right? And if you just want to be the greatest sales rep making the most amount of money, great. I'm going to coach you and mentor you towards that. If you want to say now, hey, I'm a great sales rep, I want to take the next step to a manager, awesome. Let's have a different conversation. I'm going to coach you differently. I'm going to manage you differently. And I want you to understand that. We have an agreement that that's how it's going to be. Okay. And now you're really setting them up so they know what they're going to get, right? You want to be a great sales rep? Great. I'm going to manage you that way. You want to take additional step forward? No problem. Then and keep in mind, I'm going to coach you that way. So just be prepared for that. And I would like you to be accepting of that. Now, if you have a manager, very different. If you have a manager or a leader of people who's a great talent, but not the best team player, then it's really about, it's too late, right? We're already engaged in that right now. And then how they work with people and help them understand, that the only way to be successful is through your team. And there must be missing something there if they don't recognize that, right?
Yeah.
I've lead several functions, right, in my past, decade or so, sales and marketing and service. And so sometimes there's that divide between sales and marketing.
Oh yeah.
Right. And, there's a little bit of this that goes on. And so that's something that I help people understand is, that there's no way one can be successful without the other. Right. The greatest product launch that doesn't have sales buy-in is never going to work. Right. And if you're not working with marketing to understand where we're going in the direction of the strategic value of what we want to bring in, that's never going to work. And so bringing them together and again, helping them build out their plans, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know what I love? Our conversation went full circle because what you said is, when you get to that team player, they need to realize it's not about their performance anymore. It needs to be about the team winning. And so if that high performer doesn't realize that, it's not going to work for him, right? And so I think we kind of tied that up nicely in a bow there, Mike. So I appreciate that. Everybody, thank you so much for taking the time. Mike, more importantly, thank you for taking the time and sharing the knowledge of the FloodGate family. I know everyone appreciates your experience and you sharing that and teaching people. I hope they got a couple arrows to put in their quiver so they can be a better leader and impact this important market. And if you have additional questions, please post them below. we'll be checking it periodically. I know Mike will be checking it periodically, and we'll answer those questions as appropriate. So thank you so much. I appreciate everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.